Hi everybody, it's Mark here, reliving the Revolutionary War, and today we're going to talk about a lady that I would have loved to met and talked with. She was just an absolute marvelous lady. Her name is Abigail Adams. She was the wife of John Adams, to whom we spoke about yesterday. Abigail Adams was not what I'll say, your typical 18th century wife. She was a woman of her own. She, and you'll see what I'm talking about. She was raised, her mother and father, her father was a preacher and a farmer, and her mother was a woman of power herself. She ran the household, and Abigail was a sickly child, and never went to school, or rarely went to school. And a lot of historians say this is the reason that she wasn't educated. Some say that she wasn't educated because educated in a formal school because she was a girl, and girls rarely went to school. She was taught, as was her sisters, by her mother, her aunt, and her grandmother. And they were taught to read, write, mathematics, and they were very, very good at it. Abigail loved to write, and she became a prolific writer of letters and journals, and just whenever she got the chance, she would write or she would read. That was her two big fortes. And because of this, and because her husband, John Adams, was a prolific writer, we are fortunate enough to have over 1,200 of their letters that they exchanged from the time that he left to go to the First Continental Congress in 1774, all the way up until 1800, and then because after 1800 they were together 24/7 at Peacefield in Massachusetts, and so there was no need to write. Although she was known to write to neighbors down the street, because that's how much she liked to write. And much like in today's world, we'll Facebook and we'll chat and Twitter and all these things back and forth with our friends. Abigail Adams would write letters in that very same sense. And it may be going 3 blocks away, but it was a letter, and that's how she stayed very, very good at letter writing. In fact, some people say she was better letter writer than John, sitting and reading the letters, And so they got married against her mother's will, but after a while, her mother said, "Okay, you can marry this guy." And John had his law practice. They lived in Braintree, and they lived on a farm. And he tried to balance the time between lawyering and farming, but really the farming fell into Abigail's hands, and especially so it fell 100% into her hands when he left in 1774, and was rarely around from 1774 until like 1790. And so she ran the farm, and she would get guidance from John, and then she would do what she thought was right anyway, so it didn't really matter what he said. She was an ardent supporter of the American Revolution. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to use her own words so you can get a feel of what she said. And because we know that she wrote all this stuff. And so she wrote a letter in March of 1776, I think it was, to John. And this is what she had to say about declaring independence. And she said, quote, "Let us separate. They are unworthy to be our brethren. Let us renounce them now." So you could see that she was pretty straightforward where she stood with regards to the move for independence, and she was that way before John got involved in the revolution. She could see it. She knew it. She knew what was best for the country. So she was involved in the revolutionary movement. She was part of the Council of Massachusetts for a while in 1775. She was recognized by everybody as being extremely influential with John Adams. So much so that when George Washington went to Boston on his first trip, one of the very first things that he did was to go visit Abigail Adams and kind of win her approval, because he knew that if he could win her approval, then he would have John's backing. He already had it, but he just wanted to cement that backing. And so she was a little leery at first because she was very anti-slavery, didn't believe in it, and Washington was a slave owner, and he was a member of the Virginia hierarchy of plantation owners. So she didn't think she was going to like him at first. And after their conversation, she said that he was very gentlemanly, and they had a very good conversation with slavery, and so he kind of won her over. She very well admired him throughout the entire war, and while he was vice president. So you know, so there was she was an all-round woman. She voiced her opinion and didn't back down on her opinion, and she hated John being away. She would write him all the time, "I don't like you being away. I need to hear from you." And she wanted him to write like every day, and it's a good thing they didn't have phones back then, or texting, because she would have been texting him left and right. So I think we're going to stop for today, and we're going to come back to Abigail tomorrow, because there's so much more that we want to talk about. We want to talk about her. She was the first women's rights person. She was, again, anti-slavery and some of her stuff there. And she was just such a fascinating and interesting woman. And so we're going to cut it short today, and we'll see you tomorrow. The subject is Abigail Adams. Look her up. A lot of good books out there. See you tomorrow. Bye.